Hi, welcome to Unspoken History. My name is Keisha. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to talk about a video clip, comment on the video clip that I seen some years back. It was done by PBS. It was a interview being done with a man named Senator Benson. He was an Alabama senator at the time. And he was overheard on a wire. He was recording a conversation he was having with two other senators for the FBI. And during that conversation, he made a statement that the black residents of Greenville were aborigine. And so that sparked because it came out in court that that is what he said during the time, when he was having this conversation with these men. And so he had to apologize. He hurt some people's feelings. I don't know how. You hurt somebody's feelings because you said Negroes were aborigine. Why would that hurt? Why would that be a problem? It would be a problem because um, you don't know the real history of America. So you don't know that they were enslaving indigenous Americans who were also Israelites. So when all of those millions of people were here, and then in less than 100 years, all those millions of people were gone. They died during war, because that's what it was, war. They died from disease, and they were shipped out to South America, Africa, and Europe for slavery. So we're going to hear Senator Benson talk about what happened between him and what he said and why he said it and whatnot. And I'll come back afterward.
When I was reading to prepare for this interview, I was quite surprised to see you use the word aborigines talking about African Americans.
I've dealt with that issue. I've already, talked publicly about that.
And my purpose here today is to say that I'm very sorry, and I apologize to anyone whose feelings were hurt by my comment.
I've made very, very clear I don't know where that comment comes from.
Well, from your subconscious.
Well, I guess. I mean, it's not even a normal thing anyone would say, even if you meant something in a negative fashion. I don't know if you would pull that out. But for me personally, you can't just close down camp and stop trying to do the things that you think are right. Just because somebody, you may give them an unfortunate bit of ammunition, you still got to continue to fight on and do what's best for the state in the long run. And frankly, it's going to give me the opportunity to, talk about things that I may never been able to talk about before.
You mean the bill?
Well, the bill, or talk about, race relations issues, things like that. I mean, I have a freedom that a lot of people don't have because of that.
Because you used the word aborigine.
Because I've been through the fire, and I can talk to people, I can relate to people, I can let them know what kind of person I am, and we can talk about things that sometimes have been, a little bit taboo.
So because it allowed you to reach audiences you might not otherwise have reached, do you not regret saying it?
I think it gives me some opportunities. I went and spoke to a group in the city of Birmingham. It was a city councilwoman's community meeting, probably 95% African American. And because of, things that I regret, offhand remark I should not have made.
Using the word aborigine.
Right, offhand remark I should not have made.
Which you don't want to say.
Yeah, I know better. But what it allowed me to do, they actually listened to what I said, probably more than they would have anybody else, because they want to see, this is that guy, this is that person. And we discussed immigration, we discussed policy that deals with the county locally, and there was the ability to actually get across some things that may have surprised them, that they realized, okay, this guy's making some good sense on some issues. I don't know if I would ever have had that door even opened if some of those things had not happened. So it really has worked as a positive in a surprising way to me to allow me to interact with people.
Why would anybody be upset? Why would he have to apologize if he hurts? Why would somebody's feelings be hurt? Is it because it goes against what's been ingrained in your mind? Like, this guy must be lying. Why would he go around and lie like that and say that blacks were aborigines? He know we got them from Africa. So also, he said it opened up doors for him. Now, if you notice, the man in the interview that was interviewing him kept saying, because you used the word aborigine, because you said aborigine. He said, I don't know where it come from. it came from your subconscious. Well, how did it get in there? Anyway, it goes against what he was taught. It goes against what the narrative he's supposed to maintain. But you just never know what's going to slip out. So he was able to, I'm sure gain a whole bunch of black votes as a result of saying that, right? Maybe that was the plan in the first place, was to get black people on his side because they're trying to pass some bill, to rip all Americans off. Why, you think they just ripping us off and just taking our rights? No, yours are gone too. And I'm gonna keep saying that until we realize that it's just not it's not the way it goes. You make a law for all of your subjects, and then you say, wait, those are included, but we're gonna strip them of their rights. You can keep yours. No, they stripped everybody of their rights. Okay, and also, this is the point where I wanted to say, was that senator lying? And so I have this publication right here, another one. I like to print stuff because I don't like reading it on the internet. It's called 103 Amazing Facts About Black Indians of the Western Hemisphere by Canyon. Okay, so you can find that too, I think, at archive.org. And so I'm going to read this this other publication called the I can't remember all that. It's called, I used a quote from it in my book, Amid the Twisted History. The quote is called, the article. It's the document dated 1851. A treatise on, they call it a document. The thing is 455 pages long. That's considered a book to me. A treatise on physical geography comprising hydrology, geosceny, geology, meteorology, botany, zoology, and anthropology by A. Barrington. In this collection of studies, Barrington makes an analysis of the different people around the world and notes their similarities and their very small differences. And so I'm going to read that article. I'm going to put the article up and read it, and then I'll come back with the final commentary. Okay. This document, it is a treatise on physical geography comprising hydrology, geosceny, geology, meteorology, botany, zoology, anthropology. Okay, written in 1851 by A. Barrington. Okay. In this collection of studies, he makes a very good analysis of the different people of the world and notes their similarities and their very small differences, which are listed in the next paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to read that. And he's just going to talk about what the people look like all over the world. Okay. The careful and extensive researches of Dr. Picard have proved to the satisfaction of all physiologists of any note that there is only one species in the order Bimana, and that all the differences we observe in the physical character of nations that result from the different circumstances that operate upon them, just as we see varieties incessantly appearing in the same species of plants and animals, sometimes much more unlike than the most dissimilar of the human family. As this subject is neither uninteresting nor unimportant, we shall give a brief statement of the conclusion established, referring for full details to the works mentioned in the note below. Okay. The peculiar, that's a hard word for me, it's a tongue twister for me, sorry. The peculiarities chiefly relied upon by those who have maintained that man is of several species are the color of the skin, the nature of the hair, and the peculiar conformation of the bones, particularly of the skull. It is sometimes stated in popular works that there are differences in the structure of the skin, but every anatomist knows that such is not the case. With respect to the color of the skin, it exists only in the cuticle, or the scarf skin, which is immediately above the cutis vera, or true skin. It depends on the presence of a number of pigment cells, which are intermixed with the ordinary cuticular cells. On taking an extensive survey of the human races, we find these cells exhibit every intermediate hue, from a very light brown to jet black. The matter is never absolutely colorless. The matter is never absolutely colorless or of any other hue than some kind of brown or black. In some varieties, however, it is not uniformly distributed in every individual, but in patches, constituting what are termed freckles. These occur only in fair skinned varieties. My husband is a darker skinned person and he has freckles, so some and he may have gotten darker over time. He was a little bit lighter, but him and his brother, they still have freckles. These various shades of color also pass, oh my goodness, insensibly into each other. That word is almost cut off over there. And they are generally connected with climate. There, there is here wanting, therefore, those sharp and sudden transitions which distinguish species. If the Negro be of one species, and the Dane of another, to which belong the brown Italian or Spaniard? If you say to the white race, if you say to the white race, we ask to which belong, and the still darker Arab, and the still darker Nubian. But the argument founded on color is directly met with contradictions by the historic fact that the very same race exhibit every shade of color. We may instance the great Indo-Atlantic family, otherwise called Indo-European, Indo-Germanic, or Japhetic, which stretches from India across the whole breadth of the old continent of Ireland, and now from the Atlantic across the whole breadth of the New World to the Pacific. These family, this family is so connected by language and by mental and physical peculiarities that no physiologist whatever disputes their being of one race. Now among them we find every shade of color, from the black of the southern Hindu to the fair and florid hue of the Highlander or the Briton. The rapidity with which color changes is seen in the English colonies of North America. It is not 250 years since the first colonists arrived from Britain, and much shorter time since the ancestors of most of the present New England, New Englanders across the ocean, and yet they have lost their clear complexion of their kindred beyond the water and acquired much of the hue of the Southern French or the Northern Spanish, so that if any assemblage of each nation were placed side by side, there could be no difficulty whatever in distinguishing them by their complexions alone. With the respect to intermixture with Indians, we know as a matter of fact that it never took place. The Aborigines of America are another instance. They are all unquestionably of one race. And yet, as we move from around the lakes toward southward, they become darker and darker till in the plains of Orinoco and the Amazon, they are nearly black, while the cool and humid shores of the Pacific, they are found fairer than many Europeans, and their cheeks frequently display the ruddy hue common among white men. Okay, so basically saying that these Aboriginal Americans were every shade of black and brown, including fair skin, almost white looking. So when the senator said, okay, so apparently the senator was right, right? According to this, according to Black Indians, according to Jack Forbes, according to so many other books and writers, the Aboriginal Americans were Negroes. Kinky haired, brown skin, black skin, light skin, Negroes were in America. Okay, so I'm going to try to see if I can get this. There it goes. All right, so The Webster's Dictionary, 1828 dictionary online says that American as a noun, or as an adjective, it pertains to America. As a noun, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper color races found here by the Europeans, but now applies to descendants of Europeans born in America. Now, how do you take somebody's whole status away? Like, the original Americans were the copper colored people that you came over here and enslaved. That's all of the Europeans. The Catholics, the conversos, which were the Moors that converted. I don't know what they call those Israelites that converted to Catholicism, but these were people coming over here for colonization. And so, how would you know the difference between those black people that are coming and the black people that were already here? Because they all look, the skin color, I mean, it ain't like we got all these different shades of brown. And you could say, well, those are Nubians and those are Arabs and those are Negroes, because some of the Negroes in America were just as black, according to the treatise on physical geography and all those other words that went with it. So these Negroes that were then placed under the name, these Aboriginal Americans that were placed under the name Negro. So when you seen all those Indian wars, you know what happened at the end of an Indian war? When they got done with the Indian War, those they didn't kill, they enslaved. So this is how their number kept getting bigger. They weren't going over to Africa getting anyone. They were stealing and pillaging Indian lands, taking their homes, taking their businesses, taking their lands, and enslaving the hostile ones. So they enslaved the women, the children, and then they're Negroes. So you can say, I got some African slaves for sale right here at the slave auction block. How would you tell the difference? You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Okay, unless they still spoke their language, which once they were put in slavery, they were stripped of that language. They can't dress the way they used to dress, and they can't participate in their culture or religious practices once they were captured and enslaved. So when we read about the slave revolts and the Indian wars at the same time, they were happening at the same time. America has been in constant war for over 500 years. If you call what we are in right now, we might not be warring on this continent, but America has been in constant war since the beginning of colonization. So if these Indians are fighting for their lands, and Negroes, former Indians, now Negroes because they're enslaved, if they're fighting for their freedom, when these Indians have an uprising and want to fight back against the colonizers trying to take their stuff, they end up shipped out or enslaved right here in America. So that's what happened. And the actual story, which I'm going to piece together, is that these Negroes, it lines up with the Bible. These Negroes are Israelites. The Bible is not a lie. And so, since I believe it wholeheartedly, not because somebody has tricked me or because I'm weak minded, whatever people like to call believers, no, because it's true. Because everything that has happened to every kingdom and every people has happened. Kingdoms rise and they fall. America rose, she's going to fall too. Because it's scripture. Not because I want it to happen or because I hope it happened. No, I don't hope it happened. But what is. Just like we were going to go into another slavery. Right? The Israelites were going to go into two 400-year slaveries. Or hundreds of years slavery. Because I'm not finna go through this argument with people. They were only in Egypt 200 and something. Whatever. Okay? Because we don't even know what date it is. We don't know. Our calendars are off. According to the way our days are set up and our calendar is set up, we're all basically sun worshipers. Sun, moon, and star worshipers. That's what we are. Our society is set up around it. When we name the days of the week, we're naming one of those luminaries. The months, luminaries. Our calendar, a luminary. So we're according to the scripture, it says that his people will be forced to serve the gods of the nations that's over them. Okay, so um, I think I said I was going to read one more thing that applies to that, and then we're going to close this up. Okay, so this is Africans and Native Americans, The Language of Race and the Evolution of a Red Black People by Jack Forbes. I'm going to read the physical version because this does not allow me to go to the page that I want to go to. I'm reading in page 203, second paragraph. Later censuses also tended to increase it. So I'm reading this just to show that Negroes were considered aboriginals or Indians at the same time that those Mongol-style Indians that were considered Indians or that are still considered Indians mixed with other Europeans and Eurasians that, can just keep coming over here and getting in the tribe. I just find it interesting. Anyway, so the whole idea of this is to not allow you to know what's really going on, because then you have to keep going to your these government officials or presidents or kings or whoever your leader is for information like you're a child, like you're still a baby. You need them for food, you need them for clothes, you need them for water. Well, the Aboriginal people of America didn't need anybody for water, food, and clothes. They made their own. They grew their food, they grew their clothes, and they grew their medicine. So these people don't want you to know, and I'm not talking about regular everyday people like me. We stuck in we in the game but not playing, right? We're one of the pieces on the game being moved around by other people. So if, ultimately, they don't want you to know that you're in a spiritual war, and this is a war between good and evil, between the Most High God and the fallen. That's what this war is. And so, if they could keep you from knowing that these people in America that were enslaved were the children of Israel, then we can keep on telling you anything about this Bible, right? That land over there is the land of Israel. Those people are the original people. They're converts, which is still okay. They can convert to believe in the Most High, but that's not what the leaders of that state of Israel do. Now, the people are caught in the middle just like everybody else. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know why this whole situation is the way it is, and they're caught in the middle, right? So, if you were to find out that the Bible was true and that the children of Israel are in America under slavery and still in America under oppression, you would probably do something differently if you were to know that. But that's not something that's going to be let out. You can still Google right now black Native Americans or black American Indians, or most of the Negroes were American Indians, and it'll say that it's false, that it's fake information, that they fact checked it, and that it's wrong. Really? Well, Jack Forbes wrote his book at the University of Illinois in Champaign. This must have been his dissertation. This is not a lie. Senator Benson is not lying. Webster's Dictionary is not lying. The research documents, the pristine myth, the other document I just read on the treaties of physical geology, those aren't lying. But what is a lie is the mainstream literature that is pushed to us as true. And this has been happening since the 1700s, that they use Christianity, science, politics, and everything to suppress the truth and to give you the narrative that they want you to have. Okay, so this book here, Jack Forbes, it says later, censuses also tended to increase the size of the Negro group by including most persons of mixed Indian and African ancestry. Now, if Negroes look like Africans, that means they're both black and brown, different shades of black and brown, with different. Uh, all of the hair is not woolly. Some of our hair is all of it is curly, but some of them have different types of curls. But anyway, if American Indians and Moors or Africans, North Africans or whoever, wherever they got them from, they look the same. So when you brought those, when these Africans, 20 Africans, whoever, okay, because that's a lie too. Just check the Smithsonian out. They got an article out. I did a video on it. The article is The Misguided Focus of 1619, written by the Smithsonian, where they were saying that to use 1619 as the date to establish when the first Africans arrived in America is misguided. It's a misguided focus. It does not accurately tell us when the first Africans or when Africans arrived in America or their association to America. So when he says mixed Indian and African ancestry, stop it. I'm trying to figure out, these white people must have been like able to read your body scans, DNA, because there's no way. But what was happening is if you weren't white, if you did, you were not light. So that means that you didn't, because once they emptied everybody out and put the last remaining people that did not get shipped out or killed or died in slavery, then they needed somebody to replace who the Indians were, because to the world they weren't enslaving the Indians. To all of Europe, right after the 1776 Revolutionary War, what they did was they separated themselves from Britain and from the European powers because they wanted to stop the enslavement of the indigenous people. And the people that were in America said, no, we can't. We're not going to be able to do this without these Aboriginal slaves. We can't do it. And so this war separated them from the European powers, and now they can do whatever they want with the indigenous people. So what they do, ramped up them Indian wars, ramp them up so we can put more of these Negroes in slavery and call them Negroes. Because a lot of these Indians, a lot of these people in America could speak English already, right? The Moors were here, so they spoke Spanish, they spoke English, they probably spoke French, and whatever their tribal language was. Okay, so let me get to this reading. Later censuses also tended to increase the size of the Negro group by including most persons of mixed Indian and African ancestry. For example, the 1930 census takers were instructed to count as Indians those of mixed white and Indian ancestry, except where the percentage of Indian blood is very small, or when the person is regarded as a white person. So basically, they don't look like they got no type of, even the Mongol Indian in them. They just look like white. So then they can be considered white. Okay, it says is regarded as a white person where he lives, but the same reasoning was not applied to the African American hybrids. So if black people were to, in the 50s and 60s, they talked more about being Indians then. If they were caught saying that or trying to proclaim that in front of white people, that was like a jail sentence. Now, please understand that there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with if a person that is an original person of this land to try to self-identify like everybody else, like all of the Eurasians, the Europeans and Asians that can come over here and identify as Americans, but the original Americans cannot. Why? Okay, this is all. If you find out that these um, Negroes were Aboriginal Americans, then you're gonna find out that they were also Israelites. Some of them. I ain't talking about everybody that was in America, because there were many different people in America, and you recognize them by their religious practice, not by their skin color. So there were Egyptians and Islam and all kind of Hindu, all kind of religions, but the people all still have the same color skin. So it says they did not. This was not applied to the African American hybrids. Such people shall be returned as Negro unless the Indian blood predominates and the status of Indian is generally accepted in the community. Nobody in the community was going to let Negroes uh, self-identify as who they really were. No, you're from Africa. We ain't from no Africa. If that was the case, we could go back without being colonizers like they did with Liberia. When those Africans went back, expats, whatever they wanted to call it, that was a colonization effort. So the black people from America went with whites over there to Liberia to colonize the Liberians in their land. Talking about going back home. No. And there's been nothing but fights and civil war over there. You know why? Because those people are tired. They were tired of being subjugated by another people, taking their land and their stuff, and now probably saying that they're the indigenous people over there. The 1940 Census Instructions requires that an American African hybrid be counted as a Negro unless the native ancestry very definitely predominates. How would you tell? What, they have slanted eyes, maybe straight hair? And he is universally accepted in the community as an Indian, okay, which wouldn't happen for a Negro. Thus, the term, I would suggest that in many parts of the country, white census takers would have counted as Negro virtually all Indians. This is Jack Forbes' book, page 203, third paragraph. Showing African ancestry except in countries where the Indians openly resisted such a classification. It is interesting to note that in most recent U.S. censuses, 1980, persons of part Indian ancestry had to be very alert if they wished to be counted as an Indian. Census rules forbade a person being counted in more than one racial category. Now, right now, all that a white-skinned person has to do to prove that they're Native American is to be 1/32nd. How do you even count that number? Let me see. If you're a grandparent, then you're 25% of your grandkids. And then if you're a great grandparent, you only got 12.5% of your grandkids. So how far back is that? 1/32nd? But then original Indians couldn't be mixed with one other group and be called an Indian if they were Negro, if they were brown skinned, because these other people aren't Indians. They're not aboriginals. Okay. I would suggest that in many parts of the country, white census takers would have counted as Negro virtually all Indians, showing African ancestry, except in countries where the Indian openly resisted such a classification. Oh, sorry, I just read that. It is interesting to note that in most recent U.S. census 1980, the 1980, persons of part Indian ancestry had to be very alert if they wished to be counted as Indian. Census rules forbade a person being counted in more than one racial category, and no mixed status was allowed. Thus, a person who checked more than one box was to be counted only with the first category marked, and white came first, black second, Indian third. In short, any person who checked both black and Indian would be counted as black only. And then on page 205, second paragraph, from 1803 to the Civil War, all free people of color in Virginia were required to register. These required to register. The register for Essex County has survived, and in it we find many black, dark brown, tawny, very dark mulatto, shade lighter than a dark mulatto, and bright mulatto, very bright mulatto, and very bright mulatto, almost white. So these were all the categories. One man, the son of a non-white father of Indian extraction, judging from his family name, and a white mother, was described in 1844 as a bright colored mulatto with hair somewhat like a white person. His brother, the son of the same white man, was described as a bright mulatto with long hair. No doubt the hair is being worn long because of Indian identity, since this was common for Native Americans in Virginia through the 1890s at least. It should be noted that all of the persons with Indian family names registered in Essex, with the exception of one woman and her children, were born free. In Delaware in 1850, several legal cases developed when laws designed to control free Negroes and mulattoes were applied to Indian communities in that state. Mm, mm, mm. So what I am saying is that the Aboriginal Americans were black, brown, tawny, light skin, kinky hair. They were Negro. They were what is called Negroes. So those Indians that were taken into slavery were just relabeled Negroes, right? The Portuguese came up with that name in the 1434 so that they can, slap that name on the Israelites. Now, whether they knew that these were Israelites or not, God knew. God knew he had pronounced another slavery upon his people. And he knew that when the time of the end came, he didn't want those people to be involved with the League of Nations, because the League of Nations are in cahoots with the fallen. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day.